the forest has a wood of trees.
More and more, every day, we are living in a binary choice world. It's time for the middle ground with Ben.
Yes, welcome to the middle ground. And, we are doing right now a basic impromptu episode, which means I've just taken 10 of the best proofs of something versus 10 of the best proofs for the opposite thing, or like an opposing viewpoint. And this is a risky subject in a sense that I'm going to broach. I mentioned it in my inaugural episode of this, the basic shape of the Earth thing. Okay, so the two main ones that you'll hear about, of course, are the one that is widely accepted as the scientific evidence and proof of what it actually is according to science, which, you know, my thoughts on science. To inject a bit of opinion really quick, I think the scientific method is a sound way to determine the closest thing to truth, but we never truly understand the complete truth every single time. So they're always working to find new models to explain things. Now, so, I'm dubious myself about the round earth thing because I've seen a couple of things that might debunk it. But then again, I was looking at a different sort of point of view than the scientific way entirely. I mean, there were some people talked about some scientific things that would debunk it in the opposite direction. But let's face it, though, it's not getting a lot of attention across the science world. So anything that doesn't can't automatically be trusted as, well, according to most experts or the general public, actual science. So my opinion on this doesn't matter at the moment. I just want to look at a couple websites, which I will admit I did not handpick, specifically for this. I just did it like a normal person would and go and search for 10 of the best reasons for this, 10 of the best for that. Okay. So this might be how we do it, because this is basically the, when people go to research this is what they'll do. They will go ahead and just make a search, and then they'll check the first couple things or whatever, and they don't do an exhaustive look at it. So I know I'm being long-winded, but I felt that was important to explain. Of course, the other viewpoint is the flat earth thing, which I never really talked about in detail here. I don't prescribe to the flat earth theory myself. I'm sure that whenever you have a 50-50 choice that's popularized by the mainstream, it's a forced choice upon us, and neither one could be correct, or maybe only one is. I mean, I'm not going to draw a conclusion at the moment. I just think there's something going on, and I'm not going to do exhaustively showing you proofs against the round earth right now or proofs against the flat earth. I'm just going to read the articles and we're going to see what we find. Okay, so let us see what we've got with the first proof, or not the first proof, but the first, I don't want to say theory, but viewpoint, because according to science, it's not a theory that the earth is a sphere. So we're going to say that's a scientific fact, according to most people. And I just bumped my microphones. I wanted to adjust it and get it out of the way of my shoulder. I'm kind of talking a bit close to it, but that's the way it works. All right, so we're going to switch to the display and hope I can read this. Maybe, just maybe, if I slip on my reading glasses, I can see this without turning my head to look at my second screen, which is where the website is. But if I pull it up in my OBS program, I might be able to see and read it enough with these glasses on. because it does zoom things in and enhance a bit. My eyesight isn't that bad, but when you shrink down something from a 1080 display into something smaller than that, you get trouble reading it. All right. So I'm going to read this verbatim, and then we're going to move on to the second one. Then I'm going to give you my thoughts, okay? That's how we're going to do this. All right, so we got 10. See, my reading is bad. No, 10 ways to prove the Earth is round, all right? All right, there's my mouse cursor. See, I can control the screen without looking at it through OBS as long as I move the cursor over there and I just do my looking at it through here. All right. I know I can always zoom into this too, but I'm not going to mess around with the way I got it set up. Okay. Scientists have known for hundreds of years that the Earth is round, but some people still don't believe. What website is this? Escafy? I haven't heard of it. It's one of the first ones I pulled up. Okay. It's natural not to believe something without evidence. I agree with that. But there is so much evidence out there that there's no reason to believe the Earth is flat. There are plenty of ways to prove the Earth is round. Here are 10 that should be convincing. Okay, so if this is based on the scientific evidence, we should have no question, right? Because that scientific method is supposed to bring us there. All right, ships and the horizon. And I kind of have to read this verbatim. I don't know. It's kind of a gray area in copyright. I'm doing commentary on this in the end, so maybe that works. I don't know. If I got copyright striked by this, or struck. Is it strike or struck? I don't know. Struck? I just made another one. Is it striked or struck? I don't know. We'll see what happens. All right. So if you go down to the ocean and watch for long enough, you will probably see a lot of ships appear in front of you. What you'll notice about these ships is that they almost appear to emerge from below the ocean, as if they were submerged before, and not only just reached the surface. This is only possible because the world is round and not flat. This happens because the ocean gets lower down the further away you go. As the water follows the curvature of the Earth, it begins to drop. If the Earth was flat, the water would not drop or get lower. It would stay at the same level. Okay? I'm not going to comment on that. I'm just going to move on because I have some objections there. Based on the research I did. But again, I'm not going to put my own opinion into this. We're just going to read through them and then move on to the second one. All right. The center of gravity. Gravity pulls things towards the center of the mass of an object. On Earth, gravity pulls everything toward the center. And because the planet is round, this means we are always being pulled towards the ground below us. So we don't float away. However, if the world was flat, then the center wouldn't always be below us. The center would be in the middle, which would mean if we ever tried to walk away from the center, we would be pulled back by gravity. Imagine if your house was the center of gravity. If you tried to walk down the street, gravity would start pulling you back to your house. Okay, I lied. Okay, I'm not gonna stop commentating, or I'm not gonna refrain from commentating on this one. Because if I did number 10 where it started, we could go into a whole tangent. But I want to say that number 9 is a bit incorrect for me because they are putting okay, so for the sake of argument, let's say that the scientific facts about gravity are incorrect because gravity is actually a theory to explain why what goes up must go down. As I understand it, the whole model of the spirit Earth with the gigantic magnetic core and all this stuff assumes the sphere Earth. So they're using the sphere Earth to prove the sphere Earth. You see what I'm getting at? That's where I have a problem with this. If you're trying to be objective, that's my issue. They're assuming the sphere Earth model onto a flat Earth. And that makes no sense, because if the theory of gravity was explainable by any other thing, by a magnetic core or the mass of an object, and there was some other way to explain why things go up or down, then number 9 is invalid. And that's all I'm going to say about that. And if I see anything else objectionable, I'm going to go ahead and talk about it. Again, I'm not concluding the Earth is flat. I'm just saying you got to be fair about that one, at least. And if I have any objections about the flat Earth model in the next article, I'm going to speak up about them too. And again, I'm a layman here, so I don't really have a lot of scientific knowledge in my head. So if I can't object to something, I'm not going to be able to. That would be up to you to correct me if I get something wrong. All right, so number 8 talks about shadows. One of the first ways to prove the Earth is round came from a man named Eratosthenes in 200 BC. Eratosthenes knew that on the first day of summer at noon, the sun would pass directly over the city of, what is that, Cygne? I can't read that. I was doing fine until that word. Or Cyan? Whatever. The city would cast a shadow of 7 degrees on vertical objects in the city of Alexandria. I can see that one. I'm familiar with that anyway. Which is 5,000 stadia to the north. I think that's what that is. If the world is flat, then this is difficult to explain, but it makes perfect sense if the world is in fact round. Eratosthenes realized that if 7 degrees equals 5,000 stadia, then 360 degrees would equal 250,000 stadia. This means that, according to his calculations, the circumference of the world was 250,000 stadia, or 40,000 kilometers, which is very close to what scientists believe in today, or believe it is today. Okay. I've seen some stuff about how shadows could work on a flat plane too. If the objects were closer than what science says the sun and the moon is and all that stuff. So that's speculative, of course. We don't know the actual distance as a layperson, how far away the sun actually is from us. We only know how far away we are told it is, because we haven't been to the sun and made that journey. So there's some doubt in a common person's mind, or at least there should be. You either have to trust science here and what they're saying, that you live on a ball, right? And this is how far the sun is away. Or you just do what I just did and raise that valid point, because you can make this work if they're closer. And how do we really know? Again, not advocating for a flat Earth, but just saying, I'm playing devil's advocate. And I'm going to do the same thing on the flat Earth article if I have anything objectionable, okay? I'm being honest, like we all should be, with these points. If you're going to dogmatically just trust science, then, or what scientists say, or people from thousands of years ago that made an experiment. I mean, has nobody more recently than Eratosthenes made an experiment that could demonstrate what I just said? That if it were closer, it would be the same? I mean, we can do this on small scales too with other light sources. If we can do that and prove it, there you go. I don't know. I'm just saying. All right, number 7. If we keep going like this, we're going to be at this forever. That's why I didn't intend to stop through it, but it is what it is. And we're kind of being a bit rough on this episode. It's impromptu anyway. Okay, so constellations. If you travel a lot, and like to look at the stars, you may have noticed this. Does that say his phenomenon or this? It should be this. If I'm just saying the word his for some reason. But the constellations you see in the one part of the world can't be seen in the second part of it. This is something Aristotle noticed. Again, we're talking about people from thousands of years ago. Or I don't know, maybe not thousands of years ago in Aristotle, but you get my point. Noticed when traveling back from Egypt, he noticed that there were stars in Egypt that had never seen the northerly regions of the world. He realized that the further you go away from the equator, the further you go from the equator. What is that repeating? The further you go from the equator, the further you go from the equator. Yeah, it did. The further known constellations go towards the horizon. Typos in an article online. What is the world coming to? Nah, I forgive it. It happens. No one's perfect. He also realized that the Earth can't be very large. Can it not be very large? I thought it was pretty large. I mean, it's not the largest thing according to what they say. We're supposed to be fairly big. Otherwise, such a small change in distance wouldn't make much of a difference. This is an easy way to prove the Earth is round next time you go on holiday somewhere. Why is the word round used in this article so much? That's what the proof was about, but like a circle is round too, isn't it? Like it's a round object. A ball is a round object too, but it's a three-dimensional round object. So technically, you could say the Earth is round and still mean it's flat. I mean, they should be using the word sphere or spheroid. I mean, technically, I've seen it called an oblate spheroid, or as Neil deGrasse Tyson said, it's pear-shaped, which it confuses the thing a little more, but he doesn't mean literally a pear. He says it's kind of wider toward, I think, the bottom than he said toward on the equator than it is on the top. But anyway, so I don't really know how this is a definitive proof too, because again, we're taking the Spare Earth model and we're assuming that what you see in the sky is because there is such thing as outer space, and it isn't just a bunch of lights in the sky that can be different on depending where you are on the plane of the planet or whatever you want to call it. Let's say it's a flat disk, right? Depending on where you are, due to perspective, maybe something that projects in a different part of that disk could not be visible on another. It's like, what am I trying to think of here? So the further something gets away from you, this kind of goes back to what they're saying above, right? But looking at it from a different point of view here, just bear with me. So if the further something gets away from you, the harder it is for you to see it because it goes into what they call the vanishing point. Things vanish from your point of view the further away they get from you. They appear to disappear. But with modern technology, once something that has disappeared has appeared to do so, you can bring it back by using a high lens zoom lens, and then you can zoom in on it, and there it is again. Just because it goes out of our eyesight doesn't mean it's beyond any horizon or anything like that. And if you were to extrapolate that into the spherical shape in one side of it versus the other, the same kind of thing could also be true. Especially if you're looking at it as a flat disk. Now, you could see different stars on different sides of things. I mean, if it were just like a planetarium, for instance, anything could be projected in whatever region you're in. So you have to assume they're telling the truth about the Earth being a sphere in order for their explanation to make sense. They're, again, using the spear to prove the spear. That is what they call circular reasoning. No pun intended, even though a spear is in a circle. But you get my idea, okay? You get my point, is what I'm trying to say. Again, no advocation for anything here. It may appear I'm being biased towards this, but I'm just trying to be honest. And using a layman's perspective and trying to be objectionable about it. And be critical about what they're saying, which is what we all should do. And I'm going to try to do the same thing on the Flat Earth article. But because I'm sure there's going to be some things I'm going to have a objection to as well. I mean, I should, because a lot of the stuff they talk about there is not really sensical, which I think is on purpose because they want to, they give you enough truth on both sides of the coin, but they never give you the whole coin. So, all right. Okay, they're going to talk about the moon now. The moon was one of the first clues in discovering the Earth was, in fact, I don't like the word round, let's say spherical. Hundreds of years ago, Aristotle, this guy is really popular. A Greek guy, I think he's Greek, from a long time ago, is who they point to for proving something. Anybody modern prove this? I challenged somebody to show me someone modern scientist that has proved something using today's technology. Except, do not show me any pictures of the Earth from space. Do not show me any pictures of people in the ISS. Do not show me someone says this, therefore it's true. Show me some actual research papers and show me like a video evidence of somebody going up into space uncut with that video camera, live feed and everything. Uncut meaning no cuts. It has to be a continuous shot. If you show me something like a balloon or something doing that, it can't be a balloon that has a fisheye lens attached to its camera. It has to be a regular lens. We don't want to appear to have a spear and have it aided. It has to be naturally there. And I realize all lenses have a bit of a curve in them, but there are some that are making them more curved for a wide angle. We don't even need a wide angle. We just need to look at part of it to see if it starts shaping to a ball when you go up. Okay, I'm getting off tangent. Okay, what we are. So if the Earth was flat, then this wouldn't be possible with the eclipse. Okay. To be fair, I should read the rest of this, but I just thought of something. But if the Earth was round, then this would make perfect sense. To prove the Earth is round or spherical, all you need to do is watch the next lunar eclipse and see for yourself. Instead of waiting for ages, you can make it or watch it online and look at the shadows, because the Earth is spinning. The fact that the shadow it creates is always an oval, that proves the Earth is not at all flat. Okay, so my objection here is if the object in the sky that we call the moon is just a flat disk itself, and then there were another flat disk that passes over it in the sky for some weird reason, or it doesn't even have to be a flat object at all. What if it's a solid spherical object? Let's just say it's spherical, and it was big enough to pass in front of a flat disk moon or another spherical moon where you're only seeing one face of it and getting the illusion that it's just a circle. It doesn't matter either way, really. But let's say they're much closer and you have those two objects pass in front of each other. One's a dark object and one's the moon. You're going to have the same effect. What if it's not a shadow? How can we prove it's not, or how can we prove it's a shadow? There are times when I look in the sky and I, to be fair here, to answer my own question a little bit, when I look into the sky, I can see like a darkness over the moon, but I can still kind of see the moon through it. So that would give credence to it being a shadow. But the object, again, could also be a transparent object of some sorts, too. Like, imagine a big dome, glass, transparent sphere passing in front of the moon that's kind of got dark shades in it, like, for instance. Like some sort of artificial structure. I don't know. I'm just like a Dyson sphere or something that you can't even see the tiny objects in. I'm just saying, we have doubt in our minds because we cannot, as lay people, actually go up into space and see these things for ourselves and get to these objects ourselves. So there should be enough doubt in one's mind to question it. That's all I'm saying. And for all I know, I could be completely wrong about what I'm saying, and there actually might be truth in everything I'm reading on this site. But again, it's kind of like we're going back always to using the spear to prove the spear. That's what it always goes back to, because they're trying to say that shadow is the Earth's shadow. And it only works as a shadow to the Earth if it's a ball, is what they say. But that's assuming the Earth is a ball and the moon is a ball and everything works the way they describe it works. Can you not see how there can be some room for manipulation in the narrative on what's going on up there? I said I wasn't going to give my opinion on this, and I'm going way off the rails, but maybe I'll become more focused in a future episode and try not to commentate so much, but I don't know, I can't help it, because these are some of the questions and objections I would have when I read through some of these proofs sometimes that I'm seeing. And I just can't help it. I hope I have as much skepticism on the flat earth side when I read that here in a minute. I certainly think I will, but because I'm going to try to be critical on it, because that's what we're trying to do. I'm not trying to be one-sided. But I just can't help raise the objections I've always had about this stuff. All right, sight. Humans have known for thousands of years that you can see further away the higher up you are. That's true. When you are on a tower, you can see reasonably far. And when you are on a mountain, you can see ridiculously far. Although people have known for years, it took a while to realize that this was a way to prove the Earth is round. If the world was flat, there would be no means as to why getting up so high should let you see further, unless there was something blocking your way when down low. Even in plain land with nothing blocking your sight, if you got higher, you would see more. Okay. Well, my only objections to that statement are, again, we talked about vanishing points, and we're also talking about, for lack of a better word, atmospheric conditions. The air we breathe, the smog in the sky, or are all around us. It's transparent when you're up close, but the further you get away from it, the more you can see it's almost kind of like a liquid, and it starts causing some things to be obscured, right? And I think it's heavier as you get toward the ground, which is why when you're on the ground, it's harder to see further. I know that may not make much sense, but that's the way I'm seeing it. Like, because if you think about it, the heavier sorts of air is going to drop to the ground. That's the way we see in observation with heavier airs and stuff. They even do these in glass tubes, heavier types of air, oxygen being lighter than, I don't know what specific types of air I can talk about. I don't have them on the top of my head, like helium versus oxygen, and one of them would fill the glass tube at a different level than the other one because the one's heavier. Even though it's air and it's light, it's still got weight to it. So it would separate in the glass tube. So that's what I'm talking about here. So if you are on the ground, your heavier air is going to be on the ground, and it's going to be less noticeable when you're in the midst of it, and you can see around you. But the further you get from you, the more murky it's going to get. I hope I'm making sense. So if you're higher, you're going to see less of this. Yeah, I think I covered it. I'm not disproving what they said necessarily, but I have enough there to probably cause doubt in your mind, because that's something I was thinking about before. And I didn't even look at this in advance, but I've seen a lot of these things before when I was doing my research. So it's at least hitting home with what I'm familiar with when I've done this. Sunlights. In the past, it was a lot harder for you to work out that the world is round, but again, spherical. But in modern times, the same scientists would have an easy time doing it, as the proof is common knowledge. Everyone knows that when it's sunny here, it's okay. So we're assuming where we're at. It's dark right now where I'm at. So where are they at? Okay, enough. I get their point. It's dark on the other side of the world. The time of day is different all over the world, and the difference in times suggests the world is not flat. This phenomenon can only mean that the world is round. If the world was flat, then even if the sun wasn't directly above you, you would still be visible, or it would still be visible wherever you are. Okay. Again, objection to that would be vanishing points again. If the sun, and also we got to go back into assuming the model. They're assuming the sun is 93 million miles away and as big as they say it is, and all that stuff. They're assuming the model they created to disprove the other model. Now, science could have come up with these things and extrapolated from what we do see. But again, like I said with the Aristophanes thing, closer objects can create the same shadow conditions. So couldn't closer objects also behave in a similar way? If they tell you how big something is, how do you truly know how big it is? I could tell you I have a 100-foot blow-up balloon in my house, and you could just take me at my word. But if you wanted to verify that, you would actually come over and check it, right? And what if it turned out that balloon was, say, 12 feet? Well, you're not doing the scientific method if you can't, check something and investigate it. And the unfortunate thing is, the common person doesn't have access to a spaceship, right? We can't go into orbit. We can't look at these things. So we can only look at it from the ground or in an airplane, and not everyone can afford to fly either. And even in an airplane, you don't get the full picture either, because you're not high enough to see what's what. In fact, when you're in an airplane, most people will notice, if they weren't looking out a window that's curved, which might distort your view of it, that everything looks pretty flat. The horizon always comes to your eye level, right? Yeah, the horizon changes as you go up. So I'm not going to say what that proves or disproves, but just because the sun goes away from you, it doesn't mean the earth is a sphere. If it disappears, because it could just simply go beyond the vanishing point. That's all it could be doing. Because if you can advance towards something that apparently went below a supposed curvature and get closer to it, and it comes back to you, and you could measure out a measurable curvature as you're doing it, that's what you would need to be doing to prove it, right? But if you can take a camera out and bring the sun back, that would be something right there. I don't know if anyone's ever done that, but and again, this is a lay person or a layman or whatever you want to call it here. To just I hate the word spitball, but I'm spitballing. My own understanding and being a devil's advocate and asking questions. I'm always willing to be educated, and someone could explain to me why I'm exactly wrong. But if all you do is repeat what I just read, that's not going to do it, because obviously it's not getting through to me just by what they're saying. There needs to be more than this. Visual evidence. I'm almost to the point where someone needs to take me up into space so I can see all this. If I could see all this, then I would believe it 100%, and I'd go, okay, science got it right. But I have no way to verify if science got it right. I just have to take them at their word, kind of. Or someone needs to explain it to me in greater detail why I'm wrong and why my point's invalid. And I'm welcome to that. If anyone wants to come on my my channel and in the comments section explain it to me, that's fine. But just don't go repeating what this article is telling me. Try to think of a better way so that I can maybe make a correction or something, or do a follow-up on this at some point where I can show everyone why it's wrong. I hope my audio is recording. We're 36 minutes in. This is longer than we've done recently, and we haven't got through the first part of it. But again, we're making commentary where I didn't intentionally or intend to. I'm getting some word slippage there. That's late. That happens. And we're doing this in one take, so it's going to be what it is anyway. Pictures. Yes. This is one of my favorite ones. The human race has managed to launch a large variety of things into space, like satellites and people, and not one of them has shown the Earth to be... Wait a minute, what does that say? The human race has managed to launch a large variety of things into space, like satellites and people, and not one of them has shown the Earth to be round. I think they just said the wrong thing there. They're trying to say the Earth isn't a sphere based on that. That's I think they mean the opposite way, that it's to be flat. But maybe there's truth in this at all. Okay, it's a typo. I'm not going to get overboard, but that's kind of funny. There are hundreds of pictures of the Earth online. They all show the Earth to be round and spherical. Other than the pictures, there are also videos of the Earth where many eyewitness accounts from astronauts. If the Earth was round, then there would be at least one astronaut or... Okay, they messed up again. Astronaut or picture that didn't go along with the narrative. Yet not one single astronaut or picture has ever shown it to be flat. Okay, objections on this one, since we're doing this. Astronauts could be paid off to say that they saw a spherical Earth. The pictures could be CGI renderings, which they have admitted when they show images of the Earth. They basically are essentially that. They take photographic data and they project it onto something. There's never been an actual photograph in space that I'm aware of. Anything they proclaim to be that is going to be a composite, from what I understand. I could be wrong. If someone would show me like a Polaroid or something, if they still use Polaroids, someone's got to still have a camera, do a live Polaroid photograph in space of a spherical Earth without a curved window, out a straight, it all boils down to is like, I gotta go see it for myself still here on this. But they talk about the satellites. I find the concept of satellites in space a bit ludicrous, to have all sorts of these objects flying around up there in stable orbits somehow without colliding into each other and causing loss of signal. And I know there's a lot of space in space apparently, but the way I understand the way they talk about how chaotic it can be up there, you get a micrometeorite crash into one of these things that can cause a whole cascading effect where every sort of satellite in that same vicinity is going to get smashed into, destroyed, and then you have a whole bunch of satellite reliable services down. I can't tell you a specific time this has ever happened or is said to have happened, but again, I haven't done exhaustive research on this, but I'm just saying that's why the concept's kind of silly. So I haven't verified there are actually satellites in space. I haven't actually verified they actually send people into space. I know they said they have, and I've seen videos of people on a reported space station. I've seen people get into a shuttle and have it go launched up into the sky. But have I been on there to verify where they actually went, what they actually did? No. It's like the moon landing thing I was talking about on the Voice of Reason podcast. We're at the point where we just got to take them at their word and trust in the pictures that they show us, or the composite images and the dubious videos of people in a space station. That's another subject entirely, but I have noticed personally some very strange things about these video clips of people on this supposed space station that do not conform to reality as we know it. Things like glitches, where you see an astronaut pick up something that isn't there, handle it, and then put it back. I've seen the astronauts' faces pixelate and glitch out while the background doesn't do that, suggesting that there are two layers present. Excuse me, I should probably get a drink of water. I've been talking a lot, but I think you get my point. And if you do your research, you can find this stuff for yourself. And that's why I'm dubious. And I think most people should be if they were actually honest with themselves. I think we get indoctrinated too many times in science, in the science fields, and to believing in authorities that we never question what authorities say. And I think it's important that we do that. Again, I'm not saying I'm right, but I'm saying we should at least be skeptical and not just trusting of what the supposed truth of anything is. This article right here is an example of something you shouldn't use to prove the Earth is a sphere. There has to be better ways than this, because this is not making a lot of sense for me. I've had too many objections, and this is taking a lot longer than I planned because of that. And I'm a lay person, having done little research in the last hour or two before I did this. I've done stuff beforehand, but I'm not showing it to you. I'm telling you. And that's different. So don't take my word for it. Check it into it for yourself. If you find anything that corrects what I'm saying, then please, I show me and tell me. But don't just call me names and say I'm an idiot. That's the last thing that's helpful. Because there are plenty of people that don't know everything, and I'm one of them. I'll openly admit to that. All right. Aeroplane. I've seen this before. That's not how I say airplane. I think they're the same thing, but let's just say we'll just do it how they do it. Aeroplanes are one of the, is they say aeronautics? Like, it's spelled differently than the word air. I think phonetically they might mean the same thing. It's like a language thing, but I think that's kind of curious how they're choosing to do that. But we'll notice the word plane is in here too. If the Earth were a flat plane, it'd be spelled the same way, plane, like planular, however you say that. Anyway, that's a digression. Are one of the simplest ways to prove the Earth is round. Again, I'm going to say spherical would be better. Sorry to be repetitive, but come on, because the circle's round too. Planes have proved it countless times by flying around the world without stopping. A plane simply flies. These glasses aren't doing the trick for me entirely. It's better. Flies straight forward, and eventually it will reach its starting point with enough fuel. On a flat Earth, this wouldn't be possible. The fly. I think apparently the plane is transformed into a fly, which scientifically is impossible. But flies fly too, so let's go with it. The fly would simply keep flying until it fell off the edge. Fell off the edge. Okay, who said there's an edge? If the Earth is flat, it doesn't necessarily have to have an edge. I've seen people talk about, and we're going into the flat Earth thing, but I guess I kind of have to here. I've seen people talk about this concept of like a dome around a flat plane. So while there technically would be an edge, you couldn't actually fly off it if you were trapped in a dome, for instance, or like a big ice wall, like some people talk about, that surrounds in like a quote unquote puddle. Like the Earth is like a puddle and a big Ishel glacier type thing, just a circle in the middle. And there could even be a dome on the top that keeps you from going up, and the ice keeps you from going outwards. So while there's technically an edge, you don't know if that's the true edge to where you're at. So there's an assumption being made here. And I don't think an airplane would actually fall if it's flying unless it ran out of fuel. Just because there's an edge there. Let's say if it were like the way they're determining it or picturing it, the plane's just not going to fall out of the sky when it reaches an edge. If it still has fuel and there's still atmosphere to fly in, it's going to keep flying. So that is incorrect. As long as the laws of physics are still in play, as they describe how this airplane works, it's not going to just fall. So that is a lie right there. As I can say that. And get lost in space forever. So they're assuming space would start at the edge. Okay. What if that's not, like I said, what if it's not how that worked, right? The ice puddle example. What if that's not where space is? What if space is up, right? If it still exists, but you have a dome over top and you can't get to space, right? This makes a lot of assumptions. Again, it's like I've said before, you're proving the Earth is a sphere by using evidence that the Earth is a sphere. You can't do that. You just can't. I mean, I think you get what I mean. I mean, that statement didn't quite come out the way I intended, but you can't. Let me put it to you another way. I can't prove to you that there's water in my bottle of water by just showing you clear liquid in there. You actually have to inspect that liquid, smell it, taste it. Like, does it seem like water to you when you do that? There you go. I mean, I didn't just say my say so. This bottle of water is a bottle of water. You investigated. And what they're doing here is they're going, the Earth is a sphere because the Earth is a sphere. They're just doing that with everything in this article pretty much. Assuming it's round, using evidence to, prove that it's round based on the fact that it's round. I think I'm making my point. It's not entirely the case with this airplane example, but it's still going back there where it's assuming the way space works. They're assuming the flat Earth model, the way the flat Earth would work. Again, it's not good enough. And their points about, okay, so if you were to fly that plane in a circle, on a circle, it would eventually get back to its starting point too. So the way to see if that's actually what's happening is to determine if a plane is banking slowly over time in a certain direction, or is it truly flying straight ahead? There's many pilots that could tell you that answer. I don't know. But even if it appears to be going straight, the way they design these things, and they're pretty much controlled on autopilot nowadays, and manual flying doesn't usually happen, as I understand it. They could think they're going straight, not be paying attention, and be banking slowly over time to go in a circle. So, I don't know. I'm just saying, there's got to be some room for doubt in that one too. Okay, so this one's about the sunset. Okay. I think I kind of went over this already. This is probably the easiest way to prove that the world is, in fact, I thought they were going to say flat because they've messed up before, round. Simply go to a beach that has an obstructed view of the horizon and lie down. Watch the sunset while lying down, and you will see it disappear from sight. After this, you will quickly get back up into a standing position. You will be able to see the sun again. So you are now higher up. This is only possible because the earth is round. Otherwise, simply being higher wouldn't increase your field of view. What? Okay, I might be misunderstanding something here. Let's read this again. After doing this, you quickly get back into a standing position. You'll be able to see the sun again as you are now higher up. This is only possible because the earth is round. Otherwise, simply being higher wouldn't increase your field of view. But isn't that what being higher does? You're getting a better field of view when you get higher, and you're able to see more because you're higher. I might be misunderstanding something, but that seems contradictory to me. I don't know. Maybe I'm just not understanding it. Their point isn't very clear. But again, we can demonstrate perspective and vanishing points are things that appear to disappear can be seen again the higher up you go. Things that appear to disappear can be seen again the more you zoom in. It's a matter of perspective, right? Of course, if you lie down and you lower your perspective, things are going to appear to vanish sooner. That is pretty self-explanatory. Anyone can see that. Getting higher up will allow you to see more, so anything that went beyond your perspective is, when your perspective changes, so does the objects you can see. So I don't know how that necessarily proves anything. I think I've already discussed up above why that wouldn't. So, okay. Anyway, in conclusion on the round earth proofs, I am not going to tell you that I am at all convinced by what I just read that the earth is a sphere. And that was my starting position anyway. But this isn't about what I think necessarily. It's about what you think. So if you think these are good enough for you, congratulations to you and enjoy your life. But if you have a critical mind, at least think these things through and ask questions and try to find answers. Maybe you can come up with better explanations than this, or you can explain these better, because this article is not doing it for me. I'm sorry. And maybe I'm just too much of a layman on understanding on this stuff. But even with a layman's perspective, I have some questions based on the scientific knowledge I do have, which I get, again, is not very exhaustive, but my basic layman's understanding of how the world works according to the way that I observe it, and is just, not allowing me to understand what they're trying to say, I guess is the best way to put it, and believe it, because I can't believe it until I can see it in a way that makes me believe it. The way I see it doesn't allow me to believe it. That's the best way to put it. Okay, we are about an hour into just looking at the round earth. Let's try to breeze through the flat earth thing as quick as we can, because we've already brought up some points that I was trying to think of that could be an advocate for the flat earth perspective. Not that I advocate it, but since we're going in these two directions, I had to bring up the counterpoint from the research I did. So let's just move on to flat Earth. And again, this was kind of randomly picked. So I think they're talking. I think I glanced over this and they were talking about Eric Dubé, which is a guy I don't really have a lot of faith in, I guess you could say, but he was one of the people that repopularized this idea. Okay, so we're just gonna go with the first one I found because that's how most people would do it. So here are some of the proofs that Dubé has. The horizon always appears perfectly flat, except in NASA and other government pictures, which are obviously faked as part of the global conspiracy. Well, I don't know if you'd go with the word obviously faked, because if it were obviously faked, then people would be able to see it. Everyone would, not just people with a critical mind. It should be if it were obvious. But there are some circumstances where a lot of the pictures of the Earth, to be fair, have, like I was talking about compositing, right? When they show the Earth disk in space, I've seen cloud formations that look identical, which would be something that would kind of show that that there's some photographic doctoring going on and they're making up the image you're seeing. So that's sort of a fake image when you take clouds that weren't there and you paint them on. I would want to see the Earth as it actually is as a sphere, and don't paint any clouds on there and just show me as it is. No matter how ugly it looks, I'd rather see how it actually is. So they need to stop doing that. Okay. I've seen images of the Earth that look completely different that NASA has said to have taken. Like the water looks really green, for instance. The continents look like one of those old models from a movie on one, and then on the next one it looks more photorealistic. But the color schemes are never quite always the same and stuff like that. So, all right. So, but the point is valid though. You go over 20 miles high, like it's saying right here, the horizon is still flat. Okay. Doesn't necessarily prove that the Earth is flat, but the horizon isn't getting any rounder up 20 miles. The Earth is supposed to be pretty big though, and they say you have to go a lot higher, but to actually start seeing it. But you're talking about going like into deep outer space, and no, a layperson can't get there. This is what we're seeing. Okay. When they give us images, we send balloons up and stuff. So I can see the point on this, but I also don't think it's very obvious either. In some circumstances, it's not obvious enough. Anyway, if they're faking every image and everything, and global conspiracy, so there would have to necessarily be a global conspiracy if they were trying to hide a flat Earth from us, right? So I agree with that statement in spirit, but you'd have to prove there is a conspiracy first before you make that kind of statement. If we add the word theory to it, that's better, because conspiracy theory isn't necessarily a fact, but it's taken some facts that you have and coming up with a theory. And that's another thing I want to hammer home. The word conspiracy does not necessarily equate to conspiracy theory or cuckoo nut jobs or anything like that. The word conspiracy is a real word, and it talks just simply about people conspiring to do things. That's all it really means. Conspiracy to commit murder, conspiracy to commit a theft, etc. I mean, you get my point. So I think they shouldn't have phrased it that way. See, I'm being critical. I'm not committing to the flat Earth idea here. I'm just playing devil's advocate, and I'm looking through it. Okay, so you never have to look down to see the horizon, no matter how hard you rise. If the Earth were a real globe, you would have to look down. Okay, seems logical, wouldn't it? This image makes it pretty clear. I mean, at some point, the Earth's going to start appearing to go curve downward, or at least it should. And you would have to start, looking down to start seeing the part that's supposed to be disappearing below you. Like we talk about the ships disappearing with the horizon, for example. If there weren't all this cloud cover on this particular photo I'm pointing at, I'm assuming that's a bunch of clouds. I'm not, well, I can kind of see some breakage in there, but you could maybe see something going on there. Perhaps you could probably see like what you want to see ideally is, let's say you got a big building over here and you got one over there. What you want to see is the one over here is going to have to look like it's curved downwards, right? Can anyone show me a photo of that? You show me a photo of that, you've got something. Because that would clearly show they've built something on a lower plane, I guess. It would be, for lack of a better term, than the one over here. If anyone can produce a photo of that, along with a flat horizon, it would show that we're simply not, high enough to see that happening. Because that would kind of prove it right there, that there would be enough curvature to, I don't know, you know what I'm trying to say. And maybe it's not possible to do what I'm asking, but that's something you would have to see. And even that wouldn't be 100% definitive either, because we have what we call differences in, what's the word? Elevation, right? We have mountain ranges, right, that are up higher. We have dips, I don't know what they call plateaus. I don't know what the term is. Dips in between hills, trenches, things like that, canyons. Those things are lower than the building. Doesn't mean the Earth curves, right? Doesn't mean it's flat either, but you know what I mean? Elevation kind of plays tricks with us. So even if, like, we go with the example of Mount Everest here, even if Mount Everest is higher than up than a building that is shorter, doesn't mean there was a curve there, because you'd have to build them the same height. You'd have to have a building the same height as Mount Everest, right? And you'd have to put it at a supposed curvature from it, and see if they both stand up at the same height. If you could somehow see them from far away without all this interference, and there's no dippage and curvature. Because if you had Mount Everest over here, for instance, and it was the height it was, and you had a building over here that was the height it was, and they were level with each other, that would be something that would go against the curvature theory. I don't know how many miles this is. I think I'm spending too long on this, but I think you get my point. Okay, so moving on. You never have to look. Okay, we did that. If the Earth was really a sphere hurtling through space, the water would be wobbling all over the place instead of staying flat. Wait, let me see here. Let me read that again. If the Earth was really a sphere hurtling through space, the water would be wobbling all over the place instead of staying flat. Well, I don't think that's necessarily true. Because if you are going to go with the idea that gravity is going to hold things down, I mean, this is kind of a weak explanation, but I'm trying to play devil's advocate. Okay, so if you got a ball that spins, and you got gravity holding things to that planet in the way they say, and it somehow is able to hold all those millions of gallons of water onto it, the spin, as slow as the spin actually is, which it's not entirely slow, but considering, like they say, the size of the planet makes the centrifugal motion, I think it's called, I could have that word wrong, stable enough to not make things go flying around as the spin happens. It's because of the atmosphere that contains things makes things better too. Because if there were no atmosphere, maybe that effect might happen. But you ever notice when you're in a car, for instance, and you have it sealed up, and you throw something, or you don't throw it, you just drop something in the car, it just kind of tends to fall down. It doesn't really fly backwards because you're kind of in a contained system, right? Everything's sealed in. The only way that ball would fly backwards and out of the car is if that were throwing it with any force, or you had enough air pull. What am I think that's the best term. Pulling of the air pressure to grab onto that ball and just kind of pull it out. Like the car, if you stick that ball out the window and you drop it, for instance, and it's completely out of the car, it's gonna probably fly a bit backwards as you drop it because there's gonna be enough of that motion you're transferring into that, and it's not contained. It's going out into an open air. I mean, the Earth itself is contained, but you're taking it out of the container it was in. So, to be fair, the container of the atmosphere holding all that water down and all that, and the way they explain it could explain why nothing sloshes around. I know that's kind of a weak thing, but that's kind of the way I understand it. So I don't really agree with the sloshing of the water going through space is going to cause that to happen. I kind of understand what he's trying to say, but I don't agree exactly. See, I'm not being a flat earther here. I'm trying to be fair, okay? I'm middle ground, right? I'm already doing the middle ground stuff. I know I was picking on the globe Earth a lot before, but I'm really trying to pick on the flat Earth too. Because I'm trying to be fair about it. Okay, so if the Earth was really a globe, rivers such as the Mississippi would have to flow uphill to reach the sea, flowing uphill 11 miles to its 3,000 mile length. Well, I don't know if that's necessarily true, but okay, so if the Earth is curved, then the water curves too. It would have to. It wouldn't just be land masses. There would have to be curvature in the entire Earth across the board. So I can kind of understand the point here. But I'm not sure about this uphill part. I'm trying to imagine so if you use a globe model on the Mississippi River in North America, does that curve inward? I'm not sure it curves up. Well, let's see. I guess it would at one point, depending on where you start. It's hard to imagine this in my head. But, okay, so he's only talking about 11 miles. It's going to curve uphill over the 11 miles in its 3,000 mile length. Okay, let's just grant it, okay? I'm not sure I understand, how this works, but okay, say that's true, all right? The idea of flowing uphill. Water doesn't go uphill. I think it's the point that is trying to be made here. You don't see water flow upwards. It always goes downwards because of the gravitational force, right? At least I can't think of anything that would have water go. Well, I guess, okay, geysers. Geysers can have, see, I'm trying to be fair. Geysers can squirt water upwards. That's not exactly uphill, but it does go up sometimes. I'm just trying to think of a scenario where a river can do that, though. Does anyone know of a river that can flow uphill? If you show me that would be wonderful. But every time I ever see a river do something, it flows down. The gravitational pull has it go downward. What goes up must go down. If there's nothing that's going to contain it and it's sloping downwards, it tends to go down. Even water that would be hypothetically sloping upwards would fall down if it comes to a point where there's an edge. It would start forming a waterfall because of the gravitational force. See, I don't know. This might be kind of a wash on this one, but I'm not seeing it. An uphill flow being possible. So I think he's making a good point, but I could be wrong, and maybe there is an upflowing river someone can tell me about and show me and have it demonstrated, because it's something I could always research later, but I'm not aware of one. Okay, so if Earth was really spherical, helicopters would be able to hover in place and wait for their destinations to come to them. Well, okay, let's think about this. The idea is that the Earth spins, and I forget how fast it spins. So the ground below you should be able to spin away from you as you're hovering. That's what they're trying to say. But again, I think this goes back to what I was saying with the car example, right? If you're in an atmosphere contained, like the car, you could have like a miniature helicopter hover and place all you want inside of that car, but it's not going, the ground below is not going to rush away from you because you're in that container. So this is not necessarily something that makes a lot of sense to me, and it's not exactly the home run ball proving anything. But I get what he's trying to say. You think this, I mean, okay, so if you're going to try to go from his point of view, you would have to believe that the atmosphere does not contain us. And I use the word atmosphere because that's the scientific term, and there's no, I mean, you could say atmosplane, but whatever. Let's just agree to disagree. Whatever that is gone, and there is no such thing as that. And the ground below should be moving independently of anything in the sky. This is demonstrated to happen when you escape the atmosphere, according to the Spear model. The Earth will spin away from you then, but if you're within it, it's not going to. That's what the point I'm trying to make, or at least science makes, as I understand it. So to try to use that as a proof of a flat Earth, that wouldn't be good enough. Especially if the scientific model is explaining it well enough. So we can't use that one. I don't think it's very good. I mean, in theory, you would, without understanding the container thing I was talking about, to give you a small scale example, I think that would make sense. But if you could somehow prove we were not in a container, then you'd have something. Because I don't see any way you could not have the ground spin away from you if you're not in a container. The Earth would have to spin, or you could prove the Earth spins independently of its atmosphere. The ground, I should say. If you could prove that, then you got something. Okay, the railway from London to Liverpool is 180 miles long. If the Earth really was a globe, it should be 5,400 feet high over Birmingham. Okay, so what we're trying to say here is over that 180 miles from Birmingham, or over Birmingham. Okay, so does that slope upward? Is that what they're trying to say? From Birmingham to there should be like when you get to Birmingham, or I don't know what they're trying to say here. Like if you're in Birmingham, right, and you are I guess it's just trying to say Birmingham would be that much lower than the railway, right? Over the 180 miles. By the time you got to one side of it, it should be that much lower. Okay. This is not something I know that we could verify visually without some actual experimentation. So I don't know about this one. But if they're using some sort of curvature formula to determine this, you'd have to first determine the curvature formula is accurate. And as the research I've been doing, excuse me, I need another drink. You talk a lot, this happens. A research I've done on this tells me that the curvature formula hasn't been agreed upon by the scientific community, as far as I can tell. There was some mathematician I saw that showed me that up to a certain mileage, the much talked about 8 inches per mile squared formula works, but then it stops working because the Earth isn't a parabola, right? It doesn't go to like infinity down or up, depending on which direction or way you want to look at it, it's going to start curving back around the other way at some point. But if you use that to the certain mileage that it's good for, and you can demonstrate that something should be curving upwards or downwards based on that from that point, then you got something. But until you do that, I don't know. I don't know what formula they're using on that. But if it's just 80 inches per mile squared, then you have to make sure that 180 miles is not beyond the point at which that formula becomes useful, is all I'm saying. And I'm moving on to the next one because I think we've covered that. If the Earth was really a globe, airline pilots would constantly have to adjust their controls so as to not fly off into space. What's the name of this? Metro.co.uk is the website. Okay. I should mention that. Should have mentioned that from the start, in case you want to look for this and at yourself, look for yourself at it. Okay, so they would constantly have to adjust their controls not to fly into space. Okay, so the idea here is that if you're on a globe and you fly straight, the ground it should be curving away from you. The atmosphere should also be curving away from you because the atmosphere is also supposed to have some curvature to it, in a sense. But beyond, even if it didn't, you would eventually fly into space on a sphere, Earth, because you're not flying across a plane, you're flying across a sphere. So your plane would be angling up, or in a sense, as it's going, without, even if it's being level, because the you know what I'm trying to say, the Earth below you is what's actually sloping down. You're going to eventually reach space. So I don't know. I mean, there's plenty of airline pilots that have come out and said they never adjust for angling themselves down. They stay straight the entire time. So there might be a point to what he's trying to say on that one. But again, like I was talking about before, a lot of it's on autopilot nowadays, and it's taken care of by the gyroscopes that are on board. And you know, if you're not taking manual control of that plane, and you're not making those adjustments for yourself and just flying in a straight line as you see it, and even if you're doing that, there could be still something that makes that plane bank and turn. They could have designed it in such a way, if there was some sort of grand conspiracy, they could design it in such a way to make it appear even under manual control that you're not, angling down or anything to stay on a sphere, or that you are, or however you want to look at it. Excuse me. But it's not a definitive proof, but it's interesting if you think about it. Somebody would have to have their own airplane, privately owned, manually controlled its flight the entire time for the agreed upon distance that it would take for a plane to fly into space if they just flew straight forward, and didn't make any adjustments for that to be proven. I think I got that right. I might have that backwards. I don't know. It's getting late. We need to keep going on these, but that is basically what I'm trying to say. I mean, you need to, in order to prove or disprove that, you need some actual research and an experiment to do it. So I don't know if that's definitive, but that's interesting to think about. All right. So if there actually were billions of stars in the night sky, flat earthers think there aren't. Well, I don't know. They necessarily don't think there aren't. They just don't see that many. I don't know that anyone could see billions of stars in the night sky, because you would have to count that. First of all, I don't know how we could ever count that. It might take a million years to count billions of stars in the sky, even if there were. That's such a huge number. The entire sky would be full of light. Well, not necessarily. If there were billions of stars in the sky, they could be of varying degrees of brightness. Some could be too dim to actually see because they're so dim. There might be stars in between the blackness you're looking at because they're so dim. And also, the vanishing point thing should come into play the further you are away from something as well. If that works that way on a planet, it should work that way off of a planet. The sun, for instance, we look at the sun apparently go beyond the vanishing point or set, depending on your perspective. Why can't the same thing be true for stars in the sky? The further away you get from something, the more it vanishes from your sight. If you could zoom in, and this is what they apparently do is with a satellite telescopes and stuff, is they zoom in that black space and then they all of a sudden pick up a star. So I think I'm kind of proving the I'm not really necessarily proving the sphere Earth or the astronomy view of things as we are told in science by saying this, but it kind of makes sense when looked at in that way. Anyway, so if the Earth was constantly spinning, aeroplanes would never be able to... I think I know why it's aeroplane now, because that's probably the UK way of saying it. Would never be able to reach their destinations due to the 500 mile per hour headwind. Okay, so what we're talking about here is if you're flying into the headwind on a spare Earth, you would never be able to reach your destination because the plane couldn't fly faster than the wind. So you'd be fighting against the current of the wind. They're kind of saying you would stay almost in place. Again, though, this is assuming that the conditions are not contained in a container. If we're taking it back to the car analogy, you can have your AC turned on in your car and cause an air current in your car. Not quite as strong as 500 miles per hour. And I wouldn't say that would be a very good safe thing to have inside of a car, certainly. But let's say hypothetically you did. You could probably still move something with your arm, like a model airplane, against that and get it to your beyond your dashboard or whatever you want to call it in your console and toward the windshield, couldn't you? Wind speeds, while strong, are not stronger than certain things, right? Jet engines are pretty powerful things. They can fight against wind currents. I'm not saying it's absolutely guaranteed that they could overcome this, but they put plenty of fuel on there and they can try to overcome wind currents. And sometimes they could even fly above these currents because there's a certain point where you get high enough, the wind becomes less of a factor. So I don't know how high it is where these headwinds are avoided, but I think sometimes that's why they fly higher, right? Is to avoid the wind currents. Again, I'm playing devil's advocate. I could have hit it right on the what's the phrase I'm looking for? I could have pinned the tail on the donkey on that. That's the best thing I could come up with. Or I could have just missed the point entirely. I don't know. But there you go. All right. So if the Earth was spinning, bullets fired upwards would land hundreds of feet downwards. They don't. Okay. Going back to the car thing again, I have to, because if you fire a bullet that is not somehow able to penetrate your car and go out of it, it's going to fall right back to the floor if you fire it up and it somehow gravity could take it downwards. But bullets typically don't act that way. They have enough velocity and force behind them that they would exit the car, and they have enough to puncture your car. What's going to happen to that bullet when it fires upwards is it's going to fly upwards and then land a bit downwards from where you were. In combination with your car driving away from you or from the bullet, it's going to get further away from the bullet, and the bullet's also, because of all that wind, it's in speed. It's gonna, like the opposing force. It's gonna take some of that velocity, and it's gonna land in a different spot. Is what I'm trying to say. But if you're in a container still like the Earth, and you've exited one container into another container, you're not necessarily going to see hundreds of miles or feet in another direction from that kind of action. You might, though. It might be hundreds of feet away from your car, but it's not necessarily hundreds of feet away from where it exited your car. I would say probably, I don't know, 20 feet, maybe probably the most that a bullet would land different from where it went up. I don't know. I'm guessing. I could be wrong. It could actually fly hundreds of feet away. And if it did, it would actually prove the Earth is spinning in that, according to what they're saying here. At least it would seem to prove it. But you would also have to consider it just exited a car that had a container and it went into another container. So, no, it doesn't really prove it. Okay. So, okay, we're done. We're done here. And we're not even going to look at the comments. Let's go back to here. There we go. All right. So, what is the middle ground on these two opinions since we've arrived to that point of time in the show? What conclusion can I make from what we just went through in these in this hour and a half that we roughly had an episode of? Well, I'm not convinced that the Earth is a sphere based on that one website, but it isn't just that one website that I've checked out in the past, but that one website did go over a lot of the same stuff that is normally went over when someone tries to prove the Earth is a sphere. So using that, in my personal opinion, I'm not convinced. I don't know how any logical person could be convinced in that unless they actually were to believe completely in science, right? And if you're going to believe completely in science and the scientific method and everything a scientist says to you, everything the mainstream says to you, then there you go. I can understand why you would just take the sphere Earth being true as true. But on the other hand, the flat Earth model has some problems too. There are things about it that they try to use as proofs to prove the Earth is flat that don't quite prove the Earth is flat. In fact, it could be true for either one. Excuse me. So we're kind of at a wash here, is from what I'm saying. It's kind of like pick your poison at this point. That's what I'd personally recommend to you. If you're just going to be lazy. What was more compelling to you? Pick your poison. There you go. Believe what you want to believe on those two. But you could also come to what I've come to over time. This is why I say I'm not a flat earther. The fact of the matter is, I think we're lied to about a lot of things. I think the world and its governments have taken science and turned it into another religion. The scientism aspect. Believe in everything science says without question because we wear lab coats, because we know better than you, because you yourself can't do this. There are some things in the world that we can verify for ourselves. We know that water is wet. We know that what must go up must come down. We know it's very, very difficult to dive into water and get to the bottom. We have a struggle to get down because there's a lot of pressure the deeper you get, which seems contrary to the gravity thing, doesn't it? Something at the bottom is trying to push you back to the top. This is where we go into buoyancy, right? And I don't want to go off on a huge tangent saying that gravity could just be the air version of buoyancy, but maybe it could. It could be electromagnetic. I don't know. But that's a tangent. We don't want to go there. I'm just saying, when you have so many things you can't verify for yourself, such as the shape of the earth, I don't think it's responsible of us just to go around believing what scientists say if you can't just observe it for yourself. You can, in fact, take a middle ground stance on this, though, and not completely dismiss what you're told. How about we say that somehow both things could be true, depending on your perspective? What if the world were a simulation where it literally is what you believe it is? Wouldn't that be a mind scratcher? Or a head scratcher, rather? We don't want to scratch our minds. That would damage our brain. You got what I meant, though. And I just realized I didn't frame the loop on that smoke. I did. Yeah, I didn't mention I did this. I changed my animation there from what it was before to actual smoke, because that's what I always envisioned I would have on my background with my logo. I can zoom into this. I might as well do it right now. This is going to change my track of thought, but it's okay. I'm not going to re-render the video to fix this. Oh, I don't know if that's actually going to work, is it? Doesn't seem like it's changing anything. No, I still see like a black border around it. Never mind. It is what it is. I wanted that to fill the whole frame, but it must be the way it was framed up when I rendered it, where there's a black border around it the entire time. Most people probably didn't even notice until I mentioned it. Anyway, so I think if we are trying to come to the middle of opinion, is we should probably just agree to say we don't know what the earth is. We don't really know. Most of us can't really know. And so, again, what do you want to believe? What do you want to be the truth? If you want the earth to be a sphere, go on, believe it's a sphere. You want the earth to be flat, go on and believe it's flat. But you shouldn't do that, though, should you? You should question everything. You should do what the scientific method says you should do. Search for the truth using the tools it provides to you, and then come up with the best explanation. Do you think we have, based on what scientists have said? Or do you think flat earthers have a valid counter to that in some ways? Maybe they do, maybe they don't. Maybe science is in the wrong. No, I just think you should just question everything about this subject. And don't just believe it because someone tells you. Believe it because you can verify it. I think that is the true middle ground here. The true thing we can take out of this without committing to one side or the other. That's what we should agree on. Verify it before you commit to the idea and believe it. And it always goes back to what I say. Do your own research, come to your own conclusion, and find the truth. Because that's what's important here. It is important what the truth is on this subject. What the earth actually is. It is important. But is it the most important thing we could talk about? No. I think the most important thing we could talk about is how we treat each other. How we wanted to, drive ourselves into racism and bigotry and hatred. How we have so many hungry, starving people on the planet. How we can't just love each other unconditionally. How we have to start being so hateful towards people that are much better people than some people of the opposite. I mean, just because you're straight doesn't mean you're a good person. There's plenty of straight people that are bad people. And there are plenty of gay people that are greater than some straight people, and much better people. So that's what it boils down to. Is doing your research and not committing to an idea until you're absolutely certain of it and you can verify it for yourself. And with that, I'm going to end the episode before I do any more mispronunciations and everything, because I am getting tired and I have done this for quite a long time now, and it's the longest episode in ages. New podcast or the original one? And I hope this new format goes over much better than the Voice of Reason does. And I hope it presented everything as fairly as I possibly could without being too opinionated on anything. But I thought the commentary on both sides was necessary, and that's probably how we're going to do it from now on. I think I figured out how we're going to do it. So, all right. I'm going to end. So thank you for listening to The Middle Ground. We'll catch you in episode number 2 as soon as I can get it done. Thanks for listening. Till next time.